Well, we learned this week that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. will be playing third base in winter ball in the Dominican, and we're joined by Sportsnet Shi Davidi and Ben Nicholson-Smith, who wrote about that on sportsnet.ca. Shi, we'll start with you. What would a move back to third mean for Vladdy Jr.?
Well, it would mean a few things, Alex. And number one is that he's in the type of shape where the Blue Jays believe that he can actually be an effective player at that position. And, they've long admired his hands and his arm strength and believe that has given him an opportunity to play. But because of some issues around his body composition, that's been problematic. But if he can show in the Dominican Republic that, in fact, he is in the type of condition where he can be an effective defender at third base, well, I mean, that's certainly a feather in Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s cap. It would mean that he successfully transitioned himself back into the type of condition that he needs to be in there. It's a goal that he's stated that he wants to reclaim third base. He'd rather be there than at first base / DH. And for the Blue Jays, it would create all kinds of flexibility for themselves, allowing them to have him factor at a position that right now is somewhat vacant for them.
So there are good things about Vlad Guerrero Jr. returning to third base in winter ball and trying that position out. There are also risks. And first and foremost, just from a health and safety standpoint, this is still a pandemic. There is a risk of more exposure if he is playing in games as opposed to just working out with a few people. So that's one risk. And then there's the risk of a baseball injury. The more games he plays, the more times he's busting up first baseline and risking a hamstring, pulling a groin. There are endless potential injuries. And of course, that's always the case anytime you're playing baseball. But the Blue Jays are expected to be mindful of that and to try to work with Vlad Guerrero Jr. to make sure that he's prioritizing recovery and not pushing himself too hard as he tries to refamiliarize himself with third base.
Ben, we've heard Ross Atkins mention the flexibility of Kevin Biggio, who could play third base. We know the Jays are in on a number of infielders. So let's look at the realistic possibility of Vlad Jr. back at third in 2021. Do you think there's a good chance that will, in fact, happen?
I think there's a good chance we'll see it for a game or two. I think that if you look at a season that's probably going to be 162 or somewhere close to that, there's enough reps in there for a guy like Vlad Jr. to appear at that position, especially if his commitment to conditioning continues and he improves his conditioning and gets in better shape. But I don't think that he's going to be their everyday third baseman there. I just think that as this team continues to look at infielders in free agency, it is more than likely that they acquire someone from the outside. I mean, that's almost a certainty at this point. And Vlad Jr. still has a lot of work to do when it comes to convincing the Blue Jays decision makers that he is capable of playing that position on a regular basis at the highest level.
Shi, we saw nearly 60 players non-tendered on Wednesday, some intriguing names like we thought. So each one of you has a possible name the Jays might try to acquire. We'll start with you. Who do you look at that list and say, well, that person could fit pretty well with the 2021 Blue Jays?
Well, the Blue Jays have done really well with reclamation project, late inning relievers, closers in recent years. And there are two names that are pretty intriguing there. In that regard, it's Archie Bradley and Hansel Robles. And both those guys have had ninth inning experience. Robles was really good in 2019, not good at all this past summer. Bradley had a bit of a mixed bag kind of year. But both those guys have that kind of experience. The Blue Jays do have a need in the back end of their bullpen. They believe strongly in Jordan Romano, but I think they want to augment the crew around him to ensure that they have the type of lockdown bullpen you need to be a legitimate contender. And given all the other areas of the roster where they want to spend, I don't think that they want to spend a particularly large amount of money on the relief corps. So this is a way for them to perhaps create some value, get the type of lockdown relief that they need, and be able to divert the primary amount of their money to other more important areas of the roster.
I totally agree with that line of thinking, Shi. I'm going to point us to a different reliever. I do think that's an area of need for this team. I like Matt Wisler, who was non-tendered by the Twins the other day. A 107 ERA in 2020, struck out 12.5 batters per nine. I mean, those are great results. He's only 28 years old, and his approach is a little unconventional. He doesn't rely a lot on a fastball. In fact, 5 out of every 6 pitches that he throws are sliders, but it's a great pitch for him. It works. It's a different approach, and he induces really weak contact, gets a lot of swing and miss. I don't see why the Twins non-tendered him. I think he would help any major league team, definitely worthy of a major league deal, and would fit on the Blue Jays.
Well, this week marks the 5-year anniversary of Ross Atkins becoming the Jays GM, and it sounds like he's got a lot of moving parts as he tries to build his roster for 2021. Shi, Ben, thanks for the time.